I feel really awkward because I haven't done a video like this. Like, I've done hundreds of videos like this, but I haven't done a video like this and posted it. And I asked my private Insta, so to be fair, a majority of you didn't have a say in this, but I asked my private Insta what type of video I should film. And a lot of my friends have been saying I should film a video in where I'm like dissecting, I'm talking about my stream of thoughts, just kind of like an extension of the conversations I'm having with my friends. I'm going to be talking about emotional vulnerability. One of the things that came up during my conversations, and I've actually been thinking about for a really long time, is the difference between being honest and being emotionally vulnerable. So this all came from Aradia sending me a TikTok, and if I could find the TikTok, I would. We just send each other like so many TikToks that I actually genuinely don't know who to credit for this. But it was speaking about how, are you actually being emotionally vulnerable, or are you using your emotional vulnerability as like a form of manipulation? So an example that the person used in the video was that, you know, you're in a situation where you're trying to become close to somebody, and because you're trying to become close to somebody, they're sharing stuff about their life. They're being open and honest. I don't know, my dad got divorced and it's really effed up my family. And to further the friendship, you feel like you also then need to share something to make it seem like, oh, we are in the same position. Even if you're not 100% comfortable with the person, even if you're not 100% where that person is at, you feel like to further the agenda, to get where you need to be, you have to be super honest and open and vulnerable and emotional. Which, I'm not going to say it's strange, because it's not necessarily strange. I don't think that's the right word. But when I saw that video, I was like, shit, I do it a lot. I've recently been making an effort to cultivate like a really great friendship circle around me. And I started to clock in some scenarios where somebody would be really open and honest with me. And I would feel like, okay, like now I have to share. And I'll be going through like, you know, the little library of my traumas and feel like, okay, which trauma am I comfortable enough to share with this person just so that it doesn't feel one-sided? But then at the same time, is that wrong? Is it wrong for us to be in this space where we have this kind of formulaic outlook to friendships? And to further a friendship, you generally need to be like, okay, I'm going to go this far, and then I'm going to meet you there. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but the way she explained it in the video made me really think about, are the people in my life that I'm emotionally vulnerable around, am I actually being vulnerable to them because I feel like there's a safe space and I want to share my feelings and I just want to open up to them because it's really healthy and it's very important for you to do? Or am I doing it because I just want this person to be my friend and I feel like this is the best way for us to cultivate this friendship? I spent like a really long time being really struggling to be really open and honest with the people I care about in my lives. And I consider myself a really honest person, but to be in a position where you are putting your feelings, like your mind, how you really feel about a situation out on a table for somebody, they can take it and they can run. They can take it, they can do you dirty. There are so many things that could go wrong with being like really emotionally vulnerable with someone. And I think that's why it's so scary. We see on social media and we praise people on social media for being like open and honest, and they're doing their podcast and they're telling us their feelings and they're crying because, you know, like on a fundamental deep level, we understand how hard it is to bring your feeling to the table and be like, this is how I feel, and I'm letting you into the deepest, darkest parts of my heart and my mind, and I'm trusting you with this. And unfortunately, we've all probably been through a scenario where that trust has been thrown back in our face. Somebody has not provided the safe space that we wanted from them, or somebody has not provided the response that we wanted, or somebody, you've been like super vulnerable and they've gone and twisted your words and told somebody else. I feel like I can only talk from experience, but being like first generation, like African in a different country, or just being a child of an African parent in this generation, I feel like a lot of African parents, particularly Nigerian parents, and I'm only saying this because I'm Nigerian, even though they don't intend to, because our parents are a product of their parents and their environment and what they learn and what has helped them cope, and that's what they're trying to pass on to you. A lot of Nigerian or African children see their emotional vulnerability be weaponized. you come back and you're like, oh, I'm so upset about this. Why are you upset? Like, oh, and then 2 weeks later, you're like being lazy. Oh, the other day when you were crying or when you were upset, blah, 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 blah. And it just ends up being thrown back into your face. We see being emotionally vulnerable as a weakness because we've seen it being taken as a weapon. And so we are less likely to put something on the table if we know it's going to harm us. And that's why I think people that are so honest and vulnerable are one of the strongest, most courageous people I've ever known, because I could take what you're saying and I could twist it. I could take what you're saying and I say, you are the craziest person alive. There's so many, I could literally break your heart with what I'm saying, and you've now trusted me with this piece of information. How to be more emotionally vulnerable. I was thinking about this. Like, it's been a real journey for me, and I think I'm still working on it. I would say that number one, finding a safe space and safe people, it's very important. I know it's easier said than done. I feel like, guys, this shit's not opening. Okay, I'm doing green, by the way. I feel like I have been emotionally vulnerable with a lot of people in my life, and a lot of these people have disappointed me. I'm going to be so honest and I'm going to be so real. There are so many people that I thought, okay, this is the person I can be honest, especially when I was like a teenager, because I'm 20 now. Gosh. There are a lot of people that I was emotionally vulnerable with, and they did not provide me the safe space that I needed. Some of it could be my fault, and I recognize that maybe I wasn't clear enough about what I wanted, or maybe they just weren't in the position to be emotionally vulnerable, like hold that safe space, because everybody's learning and everybody's on different journeys. I will say, and I say this a lot, it's gonna make me cry, but my friend Simran, I always say she taught me emotional vulnerability. The only person, or one of the very few people that I could cry in front of would probably be her. And be really honest, the minute something happens that really hurts my feelings, she probably knows about it, and she probably knows how I feel about it. And maybe that's just because we've known each other for so long. Maybe we've just seen each other through so many different things that we clock what each other needs. So it may have just been time, but the way she articulates how she feels, she's very much like, okay, I am upset right now and I need you to understand I'm upset. These are all the reasons why I'm upset, and yeah, I might be being unreasonable, but that's not what I want to hear right now, or this is what I want to hear right now. And she is able to construct for herself a space within her emotional vulnerability. And the way she bounces back, this is going to be a Simran fan video. The way she bounces back from people doing her dirty is impeccable. Like, you know, she will have lost friends or been in like annoying situations, and she's like, look, like, people make mistakes. I've made mistakes. Maybe I've contributed to it. I don't need the closure. I can move on. And all I can do now is try not to make that same mistake next time, or act accordingly next time. And she continues and she moves on, and it doesn't stop her from being vulnerable and being open to the people she cares about. Like, it's impeccable. And so I really want to try and be like that. I want to be like somebody that, even if my emotional vulnerability is seen as a weakness, because in reality it's not. It's one of the most courageous things you could possibly do. I want to be somebody that can be like, somebody's taking it dirty, we all make mistakes, just move on. And I guess it's easier said than done, because I promise you, like, I'll be emotionally vulnerable to someone and they will do me dirty and I will cry and I'll be so upset and I'll be thinking like, this is what I'm going to do, and I'll like block them and everything. It just takes time. One thing I've learned this year from doing cognitive behavioral therapy, and I think it's very important to mention in this conversation of emotional vulnerability, is sometimes when we're saying being emotionally vulnerable, or we're saying how we feel about situations, we could be minimizing or we could be maximizing. And minimization is you make your problem seem less than they are, or you make it feel like it doesn't affect you as much as it actually does. I really minimize my problems because I think people are dying, people are hungry, like there's so much other stuff going on in the world. Like, why is my little problem the topic of the conversation? And do you see what I mean? And I really struggled, and that with And I think it makes it a lot harder for people to hold space for you if you're minimizing your problems, because they're only going to meet you as far as they think your problems are. So if you're making your problems seem really small, and in reality they're not, like they could be so big to you, or if you're making your problems on the opposite end of the spectrum incredibly big, somebody is not going to appropriately give you the space and what you need, because you're not actually being realistic with what you need. So I would 100% recommend that sometimes when you're going, and this has really been helping me, and obviously I'm not an expert, I'm still pretty shit at it. Write down what you're going through and like write down exactly how you feel. Don't try to minimize it. Don't try to brush it off. Don't try to be like, oh, but everything's okay. Really just write down exactly what you feel by yourself in the safe space of your room, in your head, or whatever. And when it comes to opportunity to be emotionally vulnerable, actually open and read word for word what you say. And honestly, I personally think it helps a lot. It helps me in my counseling sessions because I don't dodge things or I don't make things smaller than they are. And it helps me sometimes when I speak to my friends because I'm like, actually, this really, really, really hurts my feelings. I also think that we need to be selective with how much we share. I know in the beginning of the video, I spoke about how it can be used as manipulation, or I feel like it can be used as manipulation, but you do also have to be careful because there's only so much capacity that you have at the end of the day to share with people. And it's really emotionally draining to give to different people parts, really deep parts of yourself, and they just run with it. It's taxing, it gives you anxiety. So really be careful with who you share with. But if you overshare, just recognize that's you asking for help and you've now left that in that person's hands, and the way they respond to. In the same vein, I think we also need to understand that, like, I'm fucking 20. Your friends are probably really young. Even if you're older, people all make mistakes. Like, I have not taken and held somebody's emotional vulnerability properly in the same way somebody has taken my emotional vulnerability and not held it properly as well. And all we can do is learn. Like, we can only talk to each other and have discussions and learn from our mistakes. And I don't think we should also use people taking it wrong against you. Yeah, use it to define your boundaries a little bit. Also, at the same time, don't let it be a reason to cut everybody out of your life. I'm so against this whole toxic person, cut them off, toxic person, cut them off. I'm so against that culture. And I used to partake in the culture. I used to be the biggest advocate of everybody that's moving mad, cut them loose. Now that I'm older, I'm just kind of like, actually, maybe that's not always the correct response to have. Maybe that's not always the correct reaction to have, because people are mistakes. Like, we're human beings at the end of the day. Nobody's perfect apart from Zendaya. So we're just going to have to live in the reality that we create and that we face. And life is tough, guys, but life is so much harder when you're not emotionally vulnerable with at least like one or two people, because you're just going to be carrying all that baggage around for ages. I'm really, really like happy and proud of the journey I've made, because I was also very much the type of person like the only person that knew my problems were my Spotify playlists. I would come home from school, I would be so annoyed, I'd be upset at something, and I'd go down and I'd make a Spotify playlist. And while, yeah, that's a great way to cope with emotions, is not a great way to process emotions. And honestly, the best way to process emotions is to talk it out with another human being that is correctly holding space for you.
We have such a short time in life. At this age, it feels young and endless, but it is too short to spend time with people who make you feel terrible for being human. Stack your life with experiences, memories, and people who love and appreciate all parts of you, including sometimes the sad parts. Good luck, guys.